introductions on the track.
What's up, everybody? This is Case Study QB, and we are the Political Junkies back at it again. Political Junkies 101, first show of the new year. You know, it took a little while, but I'm hard at work getting the mutual aid party.org off the ground. But let's get everybody up to speed. What's going on, David? We got Dave, we got Kimberly. So I'm gonna do ladies first. Kimberly, what's going on, buddy?
Not much. Just fighting against right-wing socialists and liberals locally.
Gotcha. We're going to talk about that a little bit. One of the first things I'm going to go straight to her, and we're going to talk about how her local DSA unendorsed a formerly endorsed candidate. And this is what we're talking about, holding politicians accountable. So we're going to go to her right after we do the introductions. David, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'm doing well too. The mayor's race and the city council race are gearing up here in April. So I've been following that closely and been really interested in like the first time public funding of elections here. And so it's been really interesting. So yeah.
Okay, so that is being implemented in this race for the first time?
Yep.
For the first time.
Yeah.
So how you think that's going to affect your local politics? The public can still, dark money still come in there? Can, you know, rich people money still come in, but now a normal person is able to run better because they don't have to rely on, you know, small donors. What's going on?
Yep, exactly. So they can still contribute. Like there can still be huge dollar donations. There's a candidate who is self-funding his like mayor's race, and I think he's related to somehow with Sephora. But but like anybody who donates less than $50, the city matches it 9-1. So if you make a $50 donation, the city will throw in an extra $450 from the public elections fund for a $500 donation if you agree to accept small dollar donations from people in the city and county of Denver. So it's pretty cool. So, there have been a lot of people running. There are a lot of candidates running and a lot of people running on that sort of. So
we're going to definitely keep us posted on that, and especially after the race, how it affected the race. So we're going to see. Much love to John Kemper in the chat. Much love. And let's go to Dave. What's going on, D?
Hey. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So we're going to get right into it. I want to go straight to Kimberly. Also, you know what? Before we do that, let me just give an announcement that I'm going to be interviewing tomorrow at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Shama Sawant, from the Workers Strike Back. She's also with a Socialist Alternative, but I'm going to be asking her about the new initiative, Workers Strike Back. And here's the website as well. We're an independent movement organizing in our workplaces and on the street against the bosses and their political servants. So I'm very excited about this initiative. It's going to be interesting to see, to ask a lot of questions that I have about that. I'm also going to ask questions about herself, about the city council. She's announced that she's going to be leaving. This is going to be her last term on the city council in Seattle. So I definitely have some questions to ask about that. So hopefully everybody come out, check that out tomorrow at 7:15 p.m. So now let's go to Kimberly to talk about what's going on in local DSA politics in Rhode Island and the unendorsement of a politician they did endorse. Go ahead, Kimberly. Oh, you're muted. You're muted. Oh, yeah. All right.
Okay.
Here we go.
So the Providence DSA recently chose to unendorse David. He was one of the folks we endorsed in 2018, and he ended up winning. But we chose to unendorse him basically because we had written a bylaws that kind of strong-armed our politicians into playing an oppositional role to the Democratic leadership, which is very conservative, especially here in Rhode Island because it's a one-party state. And so, in the bylaws, it says you cannot vote for conservative leadership and you need to play an oppositional role to conservative leadership within the Democratic Party if you are to get elected in there. Now, David Morales, there was a vote for leadership maybe 2 months ago, and he chose to vote for Representative Shikarchi to be the leader of the Democratic Party. And so Representative Shikarchi is extremely conservative. This is somebody who basically has like mob ties. His like top aide had to resign just recently. Actually, this was only like a month or two ago as well. His top aide resigned because he was having meetings with the mob at the State House parking lot.
Whoa. Okay.
Right.
All right.
So this is the guy that David Morales chose to vote for his leadership, and he was also very close to the last Speaker of the House, which was Nicholas Mattiello, a very extremely conservative. Like this is somebody who could potentially be like a Trump Democrat. This is the level of conservatism that Nicholas Mattiello was on. And so Shikarchi was his primary to a Republican. Shikarchi ended up becoming the speaker. And so at first, in 2018, David abstained from voting for Shikarchi. But last year, technically, 2022, he chose to vote for Shikarchi. And so that's it's unacceptable for the type of politics that we practice. And it's also unacceptable because in our bylaws, it says exactly that you cannot do a move like this.
Wow. So like this is what we seem to see a pattern of. Like we see progressives get in office, especially running within the Democratic Party, and they like start off on the right foot, but then they slowly start to get more and more to the right. So like you just said, when he first got in there, he abstained. This time around, he should have did the same thing, but he voted for the guy, this David Morales, who was endorsed by DSA. He voted for this right wing. The guy's a right wing Democrat, or he's a straight Republican.
No, he's a right wing Democrat.
He's a right, so he's going along with the party, quote unquote, just going along with the establishment. And so my question, did you see this coming? Was there a pattern before this vote? Because sometimes you can kind of see the person's change. They start, like, for example, Kristen Sinema, she just cut off all ties with her base or with the people that she even used to talk to. Did you see any of that happen?
There were signs, definitely, in the sense that even for the first abstain vote, right, that he took, we had to kind of push him into it. He didn't want to vote against the establishment from the beginning. And then in the last election cycle where I ran, we also had another socialist candidate run. His name was Enrique Sanchez. And David essentially refused to endorse this candidate because he had agreements with people at the State House that he wasn't going to get involved with this race, blah, 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 and kind of cut ties with Enrique Sanchez. Now, Enrique ended up winning. And so now they're serving together, but Enrique didn't vote for the leadership. Otherwise, he too would be on the chopping block.
Interesting. All right. So it's good to hear that the Rhode Island, the DSA, they're holding them accountable. I just want to bring up how, they came out formally, have a document. The Providence chapter of the DSA has voted overwhelmingly to officially rescind its endorsement of State Representative David Morales. And here's the statement. So this is how we hold politicians accountable. Now, I'm just curious, is there any way that he can reconcile and get back into the good graces and maybe even get endorsed again?
I mean, the door is always open. Do I think that he wants to do that? Probably not. I mean, we held an open meeting where we all debated this issue. And he didn't come to the meeting at all to defend himself.
Wow.
So he did manage to give a quote to the media. I'm like, you have time to give quotes to the media, but not to come to the actual meeting and defend yourself.
Yep.
So it is what it is. And
Horrible.
I don't know. It was kind of difficult for me because, I was used to be close friends with him. And I helped out in his first campaign to get him elected. But I mean, this is just a recurring problem with these damn progressives. You work to get them elected, and then they go and buddy up with the people who were spending money to make sure they didn't even get the seat. It's just
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm tired of this incoherent politics. Are you there to fight for working people, or are you there to cozy up to the same people who've been, championing policies that entrench your community in poverty? You just can't be doing both.
100%. What's up to my man Gamer for Life in the chat? Much love to you. So my last question on this is: is DSA going to look to primary David Morales?
I don't think so. He's better than most Democrats, so I don't think we would be looking to primary him. I think
Okay.
what we're looking towards is actually just building a third party. So we don't want to continue to kind of endorse progressive Democrats or whatever it is, because we understand that eventually the leadership is going to move them right no matter what's coming out of their mouth. The way that, we break this cycle is you actually have to build a party where you have the disciplinary mechanisms in your hands. So instead of the party leadership being able to discipline people because you've created a party, now you have those same tools to discipline folks.
Got you. So that leads me to the next topic that I wanted to discuss with you. So DSA Rhode Island, I don't know if this is breaking news or not, but they're looking to start their own local third party, which is very interesting, very exciting. So tell us a little bit about that.
It's really in its infancy. We've been struggling a lot, just like other left-wing organizations have been struggling with like electing people. And so we've come down to the conclusion that what needs to happen is we need to build a party of our own. And so right now we're just doing like research on how to get this up and going based on like third parties that have been built in other countries, the history of third parties here in the US, and then the laws that are currently in our state for third parties. So we're kind of doing research, and then we want to see how we can potentially build this out, because in my honest opinion, I was somebody who was in line with the realignment strategy for the Democratic Party, right? Like I've been a strong believer for many years, but with the way the squad has been going, with the way our local politicians here in Rhode Island have been going, our progressive local politicians, it's just become very clear to me that there's a reason why these laws against third parties are here, because that's the only real solution. And they know
Gotcha. Yeah. So, well, with that said, once we launch mutualaidparty.org, it's definitely, I think this is going to be a site that all leftists can use. I know I plan to talk about it with Shama Sawan as well. That is a synergistic website, meaning that even if you guys start your own party, it wouldn't hurt to use our platform to organize and do mutual aid through our platform. Like, I think the most important thing is helping each other, building up community. So that's something that we definitely will talk about in the future. Let me just give a shout out to Lamb the Man in the chat, Gamer for Life. I think I said that already, but much love to you. Steve Wolfbrand is also in the chat. Much love to you, Steve. All right. And David or Day, you have any questions before we move on?
Yeah, I was just curious. Do you happen to know if there have been any successful, like I know New York has the Working Families Party. Has there been any successful third party movement in the state of Rhode Island in the recent past?
Nope, not that I know of. We basically have had the Green Party, and the Green Party is so conservative, they might as well be part of the Democrats.
Wow. Really? That is interesting. And I've even heard that said about the Workers' Family of New Jersey, that like the head of the executive director for that organization is really kind of conservative. Much love to
is not a party. They're an offshoot of the Democratic Party.
Right, pretty much. I mean, to be more specific, I think they're called in New York City, they have I'm losing the name of it. Fusion voting. Thank you so much, Kimberly. Fusion voting, but for the most part, they've endorsed Cuomo before. And by the way, fusion voting is when you can either run somebody on another party on your ballot, or you can run your own candidate on your ballot. And in the past, Cuomo has run under the Working Families Party. And the purpose for that is if Cuomo in this example, Andrew Cuomo, who used to be the governor of New York City, of New York, if he saw that 10% of his support came from under that working family ballot, he would say, okay, I got to kind of make sure I serve that base. But if he saw like 0%, then he would say, oh, we don't care about them anyway. So that's their strategy and way of thinking. And so that's very interesting. Let me give a shout out to Chef in the chat. Much love to you, Chef, who said, yo. All right, let's go to our first clip of the day. All right, boom.
So not a very good development there.
New, the latest report from the credit agency TransUnion, total credit card debt hit a record high in the fourth quarter of last year. What does that tell us about consumer spending and inflation?
Yeah, quite a worrying development there, John. So credit card spending was up 18.5 percentage points from a year ago, a record debt of $930 billion for 2022 at a whole. Also, bear in mind that because interest rates have been rising, the average credit card rate is about 20% now. Just to give you context here, if you were to pay the minimum payment every month, it would take you 17 years to pay off your debt with a 20% interest rate. And the reason people are leaning more on their credit cards is simply because of the cost of living crisis. Because inflation has been hitting people's spending, they're leaning on their credit cards to buy things like food and groceries and even in some case utility bills. So not a very good development there.
No, not at all. Or new, the latest report.
All right, so as you see, this is part of the system. I would say this is part of the class warfare that the 1% or the bankers, in this case, they set the interest rates, are continuing to portray on the middle class and the poor. Imagine 20%, you got to pay 70 years to pay off. If you just pay the minimum, 70 years to pay it off, like that's crazy. What do y'all think?
Wow. Well, as my folks say, never tear anybody down without extending a hand to lift them. So I will say this is one of the only clips I've ever seen where the person at least tries to change their tone to be somewhat sympathetic to the working people. That's about all I have. I mean, it's essentially nothing surprising when wages, even if they're rising less than inflation, the only way you can stopgap things is by using credit. And unfortunately, there's no incentive to really stop that because at the end of the day, there are people who profit off of the fact that people are in debt. Those interest payments are, I like to call fairy money, because essentially we just tell people, hey, you're already broke, so let me just add some more money you owe me. That's going to keep people in a cycle. And unfortunately, the people who profit from that have big pockets that can fund politicians who can craft legislation in their favor, who are not really that concerned about inflation being addressed, which simply is from, remnants from the supply chain crisis and different things like that. And it just really sucks because you have so many people out here pretending they want to ascribe the inflation to, people got money for the first time and they weren't poverty stricken and suffering. And it's like, that's not what it was at all. But if you have a vested interest in ensuring that no money goes to the American people, of course, that's the narrative you're going to push. And it's the one that people have been convinced of the most, given this whole trickle down economics garbage. So it really sucks. It really does.
100%. David, let me get you in here. What you think?
Yeah, it's really sad. And I was like, in my regular day-to-day work, it's interesting, having visibility into a lot of people's financials. And I'm seeing more people either open credit cards or increase their purchases. And it's wild. There's hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in interest fees that accrue. And it's really sad. It's like once you get into that cycle, it's really hard to get out of it.
Yeah. What 100%? What you think, Kimberly?
It doesn't surprise me. Biden was known as the credit card senator. He's, been backing a lot of this credit card debt situation and putting people into, more debt. And I would like to say, folks always come out with that issue of if you give people more money, then that creates inflation. And the reason that tends to create inflation is because once you give people a lot of money, right, they have money to spend, then they're going to go out there trying to look for apartments, trying to look for, whatever it is that they want to spend their money on. But you can easily correct that by just making these goods easily accessible, by building more housing. So you don't get that, because you usually get that inflation when you have a supply crunch. But we have the power to, alleviate that supply crunch by actually investing in these things that we know that people who now have money they couldn't spend before. They're going to go out there looking for apartments, looking for houses to buy and things of that sort. We can just build these things so we don't even get the inflation. But even now, I mean, the amount of money that was given to Americans was so little that there's just no way that that's the cause of this inflation. A lot of this inflation is coming from price hikes, which Biden is doing nothing about.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, to echo you, of course, about speaking how really the inflation is driven by a lack of material resources because we've chosen not to build things and make them accessible. It also is important to recognize that, especially in the housing market, by not building, it ensures that the prices of homes, et cetera, stay high, because now it's shifted itself from being, was it a seller's market before, to like a buyer's market to like a seller's market. And that's really unfortunate because I think it's like the statistic is $20 billion could eradicate homelessness. That's nothing. It's literally a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of what we spend on our military spending. But because it's not a priority, it doesn't get accomplished. And I think for me, the biggest thing that the whole COVID policy, the COVID era illuminated for me is that almost anything is possible. We have technocrats that can figure out how to turn water into wine. It's just that they've chosen people don't deserve to have a sip at the table. And that, I think, is something that Americans are slowly waking up to, but we're fighting against 40, 50 years of of misinformation and telling people that, oh, you can't give people money. Oh, you can't spend $1 trillion. Oh, people don't deserve this. And it's like, no, they've been able to do it this whole time, and they've been doing it for corporations. It's just that now it's naked and in the open.
100%. Let me just give a shout out.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no problem. I'm going to come to you, David. Let me give a shout out to PJ Holly in the chat and Bryce Smith. Much love to you all. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I'd be curious if there's any relation to the child tax credit changes for like tax year 2022 compared to tax year 2021. Like for tax year 2022, the one that we're filing right now, for last year, the child tax credit is $2,000. Whereas like previously the year before, if you had a child that was, I believe it was six or younger, there was that payment of $300 every month. So it was $3,600 or $3,000 if you had a child above. So I was like, people were also receiving a little bit more financial assistance through tax credits as well. And that's dipped off as well.
Yeah, no, totally. That definitely dipped off. So let me go to some good news. We got some good news for a change. We're going to play this clip.
Line, reaching a deal to end that week-long strike. I mean, we talked about it all week last week. NBC 10's Alicia Palomo has been following this strike and joins us live with the details on that deal. A lot of happy parents, a lot of happy teachers right now, Alicia.
Yeah, you'd imagine they're all pretty pleased to be heading back to class after a week without school here in Woburn. And both sides had essentially hammered out a deal on Friday, but the sticking point over the weekend was the return to work agreement. After 5 hours of negotiation on Sunday, both sides finally announced they had reached a deal and signed a memorandum of agreement on a contract for both teachers and paraprofessionals. That means students go back to school today after a full week without classes while the union members were on strike.
We claim victory for a fair contract, and we claim victory for a unified community, one of transparency, integrity, and decency.
Had a really hard week. This community has a lot of healing to do, and we believe this is a very good first step in that direction. And we're just really excited for kids that they get to go to bed tonight knowing they're going to see their teachers tomorrow.
So what are the the details of this deal. Here's what we know. The teachers will get a 13.75% salary increase spread out over a 4-year contract. Paraprofessionals get a 40% raise. And as part of the deal, the union also agreed to pay the cost of the week-long strike that amounts to $225,000 over the next 4 years and a $20,000 donation to charity. And the Massachusetts Teachers Association says it will help pay those costs in addition to the fines for being on strike. As part of the return to work agreement, there will be no disciplinary action taken by the district against any teachers or paraprofessionals who were on strike over the past week.
All right, I'm gonna stop it there. Awesome news. This is what happens. Let me give you a little background. So they went on strike for about a week, and the county actually said, okay, for every day that you strike, we're going to charge you, give you a fine of this certain amount. That's why you saw towards the end they said that the union was going to pay for those fines and those things, etc. But you saw the price increase over the next 4 years. They're going to finally get some just due. So hopefully they don't have to be in credit card debt like we just talked about in the previous segment. But this is what we need on a wider scale. This is just happening in one town, and I believe that's Massachusetts. What does anybody, what y'all think about that?
I don't think I've encountered a labor fight or win that I wasn't supportive of. That's probably one of the core tenets of my politics. So I thought what happened and the fact that they could even attempt to try to find them was sheer lunacy, and the fact that that wasn't national news on the front page of everything just really shows the corporatization of our media system. But I'm happy that despite the obstacles, they were able to come out on top. That's amazing.
Yeah, 100. It shows that when you fight, you win, and it's just a matter of time. But you got to make sure you have the money. You know, the union had a certain amount of money in their bank, and they were able to say, hey, don't worry about it. We're going to still strike anyway. Because I'm sure if they announced the fines that they were going to get, and they're going to be like, oh man, everybody, we already don't have enough money. How can we do this strike? The union said, hey, don't worry about it. We got you covered. That's something that we need to have a strike fund going. What you think, Kimberly?
Yeah, it sounds great, because oftentimes union leadership is discouraging union members from doing wildcat strikes. So it's always really good to see a union leadership that's actually backing the workers they're claiming to support, because we haven't seen that a lot. We didn't see that with the railroad workers. I mean, their leadership was like, you better take this deal, because if you go out there and do a wildcat strike, we're basically abandoning y'all.
Yep. David, what you got?
It's interesting to think my dad is a retired public school teacher, and he was generally the teachers union rep for the school that would do the negotiations with the school board and the administrators. And I was too young to really understand all of it, but I'm very encouraged to see these teachers make more money. If it were me, I think that every public servant, regardless of their role or responsibility, teachers included, should have their base salary is $75,000 a year and up. And I was like, the money, I think that the money is there. Most of it's just allocated to police departments. And so it's like, if we're investing into our youth and kids and the teachers who provide for them, it's not just an education that they're providing. They're allowing the parents of these children to be able to go off to work and perform capitalism without having to pay for childcare, because the teachers are providing it. And then thinking about the way our schools are funded with property taxes, and that impacts the type of education that these students are getting. It's so multi-layered. But I am proud of these teachers for advocating, and the union advocating for the additional.
No, you brought up a lot of good points, definitely, especially with the way taxes are paid for the local school system. I grew up, and I went to, for 3 years of my high school, I went to a urban school, and I remember having DOS. The DOS was the operating system before Windows, and it was just like a black and white or not even black and white. It was like a black and green computer, right? And then in my final year, I went to a more affluent high school, and they were providing Cisco certification class. They were piloting a Cisco certification course, which you can, if I would have gotten that certification, I could have commanded, I believe, $50,000 a year out of high school.
Wow.
So that shows you the disparity in the school systems and education. And I remember even the books were super old in the previous school. So that matters, and we have to find a way to definitely balance that out. So I know we went from good, so now we're going to go to bad. It might piss you all off a little bit. So let's see how you all feel about this clip.
And then when Joe Biden won, they wanted a change. They wanted someone who was more moderate. Well, we found out after he was elected, he's not moderate at all. He always votes with the progressives, or he's become more progressive since he's been in power. And he's getting on up there. He's older, and he's not as exciting, and he doesn't represent. And then we saw what happened in Afghanistan.
Very exciting. When Doug Thompson goes down, very exciting.
So he votes with the progressives. He votes.
Not exciting. Like,
what
you
y'all
gotta
think?
get your lie straight. Get your lie straight.
I know it's always Fox News that will take the most bland, like, Democrat and be like, "Oh, this person's a socialist." Like, wait till they find out the real people, socialists, coming down the pike, because we gonna get them in office somehow. We gonna get these leftist people who fight on behalf of working families and people who fight for the poor. We gonna get them in office. So I want to see how they gonna react when that happens.
I marvel at the fact that you can make millions to be a professional moron. Like, I think I missed my calling.
What you think, Kimberly?
I mean, if you're willing to say whatever the rich want you to say, you too could get $1 million to do nonsense. So
yeah.
Just know
Land the man in. Say that last part, Kimberly.
I said, just, that avenue is always open for anyone who does politics, and many people do take it. So, I mean, as far as Biden being like voting with the progressives, I mean, I think Fox News knows what they're doing. There's a reason they rather always face a centrist politician who's deeply compromised and who has many issues they can point to than a progressive who's very strong. And they don't have any like votes that they can point to and say, "Ha, look, this person doesn't support you." Yeah. And not only that, but casting Biden as being too left wing just kind of moves the Overton window continuously to the right.
Yeah,
and I think
exactly.
It's been easy for them to do that because the squad has not really differentiated themselves from Biden and the top of the Democratic leadership. So it makes this argument even easier for Fox News.
Yeah, there's nobody to point to say, wow, this is a team, or this is a squad that's in opposition to Biden from the left, because they've gone along with a lot of what he wanted. And matter of fact, they're just jumbling him up with the left, with saying the progressives. Exactly. Right. I don't know if David, you want to jump in here, or are you good?
I wish the progressives were voting as progressives. Like,
I know, right?
I'm like actually encouraged. I don't necessarily agree with many of her politics, but like I really respect Lauren Boebert for like actually advocating for like what she wanted and using her position in order to get concessions. Like I wish that's what the squad would have done when they had the chance.
No, 100%. Name the man in the chat. Would you be making $1 million if you were? Would you be interested in getting a Fox News job? Let's see.
I don't have any interest, but I definitely know that I'd be a multimillionaire for sure. I would.
Just from the stock trading alone.
I'm gay and I'm black. Like I could totally make millions of dollars simping for Republicans and their talking points. Like I would make Candace Owens look like a progressive. Like, come on now.
They would definitely use you. And speaking of what David said, remember Pelosi said insider trading was acceptable. So
and remember we were like, absolutely not.
100%. All right, so I got let's talk about some strategy, or what's about to happen coming up here. Let me play this clip. I should have had it ready. There it is. All right, boom.
A major GOP donor network looking to break with its past tradition and support candidates in the 2024 Republican primaries. The network, created by billionaire brothers Charles and David Koch, is looking to quote, turned the page on the past several years in an apparent rebuke of former President Trump. According to an internal memo circulated around to donors, the network believes, quote, the Republican Party is nominating bad candidates who are advocating for things that go against core American principles, and the American people are rejecting them. The group says it's seen the writing on the wall and plans on fixing things by getting involved in elections and primaries earlier to find better candidates. Quote, the loudest voice in each political party sets the tone for the entire election. In a presidential year, that's the presidential candidate. And to write a new chapter for our country, we need to turn the page on the past. So the best thing for the country would be to have a president in 2025 who represents a new chapter.
So I think that's enough right there. But they about to come out. They're mad that they lost a lot of seats. It was supposed to be a big red wave, but they just elected a little bit too many crazies for the regular people. And now they're like, hey, you know what? Big money gotta have to step in and save the day. What you think about? I know Kimberly, you ran in the past, so I'm gonna go to you first. What you think about big money jumping in? And they didn't specify just the GOP. I know we're assuming the GOP side, but they can spend money in the Democratic side as well. But go ahead, Kimberly.
These characters always spend money in the Democratic side, not because what they care about is making sure progressives never take over the Democratic Party. What's good for them is that the progressives are so weak they'll never do that. You don't even have to spend money on them. People are so weak that they're not going to do shit anyway.
Yeah.
But it is interesting. I think if Republicans want to see some gains, maybe they need to stop running against the idea of democracy itself, which I think is probably too big of a hurdle for most American voters, even if they are conservative. Like, yes, conservatives want to see their policies through, but there's a big segment of them that aren't just going to jump on board with, well, let's just do away with democracy and, just let's elect a dictator, basically. Well, not even elect a dictator. Let's just position Trump the king as, our president for life. I think that right there is too big of an ask for even conservative voters.
Yeah, unfortunately, they say like 96% of the candidates with the most money win. I think that's the general election. I'll be curious. That probably it makes probably more sense that it would work in the primary. What you think, David?
Yeah, it makes sense. And I was like, this is just another reason why we need to get money out of politics, because it's just a matter of these few people pretty much get to pick who our leaders are. And I was like, really the only difference at this point is the letter behind their name.
Yep.
At least they said the quiet part out loud. I think for me, a lot of the pretending that they do makes it challenging, but I actually want to point out the fact that I think this is also a great media failure, because when she read that entire statement, what she failed to point out was that it was substanceless. All she said was what she said could have applied to the Democratic Party. Like, I didn't know what made those candidates bad. They simply got rejected, but they could have been rejected because the American people were like, what you're offering was garbage. But instead of actually critiquing or offering something substantive, it kept it vague. And she read it the way that they wanted it without offering that critique.
Yeah. No, 100%. So I'm going to bring up a clip that I'm curious to see if we're going to have a no calzone moment where, no calzone is when we have a little debate amongst each other. So we're going to see if that's going to go down right now when I play this clip. All right.
One Canadian province is decriminalizing hard drugs like fentanyl and heroin. Ashley, where is this happening and why is it happening?
British Columbia, up north of the border. It's not legalizing drugs, but as you say, the province says no one 18 years and older will be charged if caught in possession of 2.5 grams of certain illegal drugs, including heroin, fentanyl, meth, and ecstasy for personal use. Authorities say making the offenses criminal actually drives people to use alone, and they say using alone can be fatal. The theory is that decriminalizing people who use drugs breaks down the fear and shame associated with substance use and ensures that they feel safer reaching out for life-saving support. By the way, at least 2,272 people died of an overdose just in that province last year, while another 2,300 people died in 2021. So it's a pilot program, a new approach. Let's see how it works out. So,
All right. Ashley, thank you very much.
All right. What y'all think about that?
Oh yeah, this is fun. So it's really interesting because this is actually a topic where I thread the needle, I guess, of the calzone, because as a personal moral compass, I actually am not an advocate for like recreational drug use. However, my public policy stance is very liberal, and it does lean towards decriminalizing drugs and, more importantly, legalizing, taxing, and regulating them. Because one, keeping things in the shadow this way allows it to fester and adds a level of taboo and interest that wouldn't be there if it was something that could be open. I'm a personal advocate of, I think it's the Portugal model. I think it's important to have safe injection sites. I think people are going to do the drug, and whether you agree or not with what they're doing, I believe they have the freedom from dying from doing it. And I believe that means having it administered by people who know what they're doing. More importantly, having access to people to get help. And let's be completely honest, despite what the war on drug propaganda has said, the majority of people who use drugs recreationally aren't actually addicts. But you do put those people at risk as well when they can't tell if the drugs that they're using are being cut by fentanyl. You do put them at risk when they feel like they have to get stuff off the streets and they can't actually be around somebody who can inject a safe dosage of said drugs and remove said stigma.
Yeah. I completely agree. I completely agree. And I think that, and maybe it's because I live in a state with pretty loose drug laws, but we also just voted to legalize or decriminalize psilocybin. And so,
David, was Colorado the first to decriminalize marijuana, I think, in the country?
It was one of the first. It was maybe the first or second.
Okay.
Yeah, it was one of the first. Same thing with like psilocybin. And yeah, no, I totally support like safe drug use sites, especially because, and I also think we almost even need to go back further in terms of like why or how are people getting addicted to what they're calling hard drugs? And I was like, I think it's because of the overprescribing of opioids, and so people are turning to street drugs because they're no longer able to access them from their doctors. And so I was like, we have a place called the Harm Reduction Center here in Denver. And I was like, it's a place for people to be able to use drugs safely under supervision. And then they're able to also provide them with resources in order to get them into either rehabilitation facilities or, to kind of help them detox.
Yeah, Derek is from Colorado as well. He said also it's more than how you pronounce that? Psilocybin?
Psilocybin.
Okay.
Psilocybin,
yeah. We legalize nature. That includes mescaline and other drugs too, not just mushrooms. Oh, so very interesting. You guys are doing some good stuff. What's your opinion, Kimberly?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said here. And you know, I do understand sometimes people having certain feelings around this, but I will say the way that we've been doing the whole drug situation here in the US is just not working. And I think banning a lot of these substances, what it does is it creates a huge, huge black market. And a lot of the violence that occurs in, hoods, quote unquote, comes out of the black market. So the bigger you make the black market, more violence is going to occur in these neighborhoods that are entrenched in poverty, because people sell drugs usually because they can't find a legal way to make that amount of money. I mean, and as far as, people dying from drug use, I think one of the things that I discovered that was so surprising to me is that most people who die from quote unquote like overdoses, it's not that they're overdosing, is that their drug is cut. Essentially, they're not overdosing, they're being poisoned because the black market has no regulations, right? Your dealer who's getting that drug oftentimes doesn't even know what's in that drug themselves because they're getting it from a big distributor. And that big distributor themselves has already cut the drug. So I just think the only way we're really going to be able to fix this is regulating these drugs and making them legal and safe. And as far as why people use drugs, I think it has a lot to do with people trying to escape the realities of their life. And I don't blame people for that, because what's occurring now in the US is that people are dying earlier than expected. Like, we have a generation of Americans who's going to die earlier than their grandparents. People are being overworked. They don't have access to benefits. And one of the benefits is healthcare. It's not provided to you automatically if you don't have like a job, or you're not able to get on your like the state system, like Medicaid. And if you live in a red state or even certain blue states, they make it very hard for you to be on the state system, or they privatize the state system so that even if you are on Medicaid, you're still like paying into it. It's not free at the point of use. So I think, yes, we need to regulate these drugs, legalize them, but we need to deal with the economic conditions that drives people to drugs.
Yeah. And can I add a piece of something real quick? One thing is, I agree with everything that you were saying, but also we have to just accept that there is a subset of the population who they're just going to have an interest in doing the drugs. Like, it doesn't have to be anything else. And while I might, how I feel about that is irrelevant, I still feel that they deserve to be safe. But also, we have to realize it is counterintuitive to think this, but it doesn't increase usage by legalizing drugs. Like, just because cocaine is legal doesn't mean, oh, let me go grab some. That's not how it works. Yeah. But what it does do is it tends to either stable or decrease the usage, because now people who are struggling aren't afraid to get the help that they need because they know that they'll be criminalized. And so all the data bears that out. I haven't seen any data that says, oh, now more people are using. So that's something that we really got to get that message out.
No, 100%. This was already mentioned, but you're going to take away the power from the cartels. Recently we saw how there was a huge killing, and this was in America on the border, where a mother and her child was killed in a cartel-style killing. And we're going to be able to decrease a lot of the power, take away the revenue source when we can legalize, decriminalize all these drugs. And I think we definitely should regulate them and appropriately allow people to get treatment for them. Even now we don't allow people, I think it's under 18's ability to get cigarettes, or I don't know if it's 21 or 18, they can't get cigarettes or they can't get access to alcohol. And we're able to keep that under control to a large extent versus putting it straight into the black market, and anybody who has access to that market can get it. So I definitely think going in that direction is going to be revolutionary and is going to help out a lot of people. So let's talk strategy a little bit. We didn't get to the strategy side, and we got about 12 minutes left. So I want to bring up this next clip, and we're going to see, you're going to see what I mean. All right. Boom.
It was a monumental day in Harlem. Yusuf Salaam formally announced his run for New York City Council. 30 years ago, Salaam became a nationwide headline as one of the 5 young men of color wrongly convicted for raping a white woman in Central Park. The case drew a divide through the city and much of the country for years until they were exonerated in 2002. Since then, Salaam has dedicated his life to criminal justice reform, and today he made it official that he wants to take his message to the halls of power. News 4's Melissa Colorado is live in Harlem with the details. Melissa?
And Gilma, we are standing just outside of his campaign office here in Harlem. Dr. Yusuf Salaam saying that he's running to represent the city's 9th district. No political experience under his belt, but he says he doesn't need it. He has plenty of name recognition here in New York City. He says his experience as a criminal justice advocate and one of the exonerated Central Park 5 will bring a new voice to the halls of power.
I'm here today to announce my candidacy.
One of the exonerated Central Park 5 is entering city politics. Yusuf Salaam was just 15 when his life changed forever. More than 30 years ago, police arrested Salaam along with 4 black and Hispanic boys for the rape of a white female jogger. The case of the Central Park 5 shook New York City to its core. The boys were convicted and imprisoned for a crime they insisted they did not do.
In a country where you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, they saw the color of our skin and said, guilty, guilty, guilty.
Salaam spent 7 years behind bars.
Okay, I'm not going to spend too much time because it goes on for another minute. But, okay, so I put the clip that John Kemper said, nice, I hope he doesn't get co-opted. So this is the interesting thing, John. First of all, he announced, but I looked there, I didn't see a website. I wanted to see a platform, right? That's what political junkies, I know all my fellow political junkies here, they want to see the platform. We don't want to just hear pretty words, right? So first, he doesn't have a website yet. So more to come. Hopefully he does drop a platform, and then, or not a platform, or a website. And then you got to hope he drops a platform, because there's plenty of times people have a website, but they don't tell you a thing about what they're running on, right? So here's the thing though, John, and this is for everybody also. He's running against the local Democratic Socialists on the council, right? So I was like very suspect, because I was thinking, oh, this is cool. This is good that have representation, and hopefully he'll bring progressive politics. But that was the first question I had. And I was like, wait a minute, let me see who's currently there. And who's currently there is Kristen Richardson Jordan, who's kind of like a defund the police, who's a big fighter for the tenants in her community. Hugely, she's a fighter. She's a progressive. She's a Democratic. So she's endorsed by the local DSA, straight up socialist person. So one of our type of people. So I was like just curious if the establishment put him up to this, because now he's a millionaire. I can't count his money exactly, but I know the settlement that they had was 40 or 41 million between all five of them. So at one point he was a millionaire. If not, he still is a millionaire. And I'm curious to see if this is some nefarious things going on with the establishment, playing some games. So what do y'all think?
I don't know that man from a can of paint to say what it is and what it isn't, but what I can say is that there is a lot of questions lingering in the air for me. One, you have a candidate who is advocating for police reform of some sort, which you would think, given your personal experience, you would be in favor of. You haven't released any platforms. It's a bunch of platitudes, because again, he has a great, compelling personal story, but that means nothing if the policies that he's advocating for are at odds with said story. So really, before I hold judgment, I just want to see what are you offering to contrast yourself to the current candidate, because if you're actually more conservative than her, you serve no purpose. But thank you for your story and sharing it.
100%. Okay, Kimberly, I see you smiling. What do you think about this? Especially as someone, like, let's say you were in office, working hard, doing your Democratic Socialist thing, protesting your fellow council members, right out there like Sharma Shawant with the picket signs. And then here they come, bring somebody with name recognition, because I don't know if he said it already or he's going to say it later on. He was like, yeah, I have name recognition. Like, he knows that about himself. And that's a lot of it. Is name recognition. What you think, Kimberly?
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of what Dave's saying. Like, I don't know. Personally, it's a pet peeve of mine to launch a campaign with no platform, because that's the reason we're supposed to be supporting you. I mean, like, listen, your personal story is great, whatever, but your personal story doesn't dictate who you're going to be when you're actually in power. And we've seen a lot of people use their personal story and then go in there and vote extremely conservatively, which doesn't line up with their personal story. I guess I'm just wondering, one, why would you choose to primary somebody who's already doing a good job? And two, if you're going to primary her, why didn't you drop a platform right away so people understand, like, hey, this is the difference between me and this candidate. This is what I'm fighting for, especially when you're using your story of, like, we need criminal justice reform. What type of criminal justice reform are you talking about? Because if you're talking about, we need more money for cops and, like, we need to build a cop city and, like, I don't know what his aim is, but I guess I'm already skeptical because there is not a platform, and that's the reason that people should be supporting you.
Yep, 100%. David, what you think?
I'm somebody who generally puts the cart in front of the horse. So
he's like, ready? Where can I send the money?
Right. But I was like, in all seriousness though, too, I was like, I respect anybody who is willing to put themselves out there and run for some sort of political office because they believe that the solution or the ideas that they have will make their communities or their society better. And so I I am hopeful that that's why he is, but I'm in agreement with you guys as well that like there should be some sort of platform and policy ideas that should be put out there.
Yeah, so I'm gonna play a quick clip, and then we're gonna play a clip about black faces in high places that unfortunately might leave us on a bad note, but I love having you guys. I love seeing Steve and everybody else in the chat, and we're just having this community discussion. So let me play this video on giving an example of capitalism. Fortunately, yeah. So it's real quick clip. I don't think it has any sound. Oh, there's the sound. Yeah. So this is in Austin. People resorting to taking food from a grocery store dumpster during a power outage. And this is a society in capitalism. And you know, on Fox News, they love to show Venezuela, and they love to show Cuba and show the bad side of it. But you know, here in this capitalistic country, you can definitely see, look at this right here, and definitely in certain places that are worse off than in some third world countries, you know. Yeah, unfortunately. All right, so I just wanted to play that real quick, and then this is the faces in high places. Boom.
We've been through moral moments before, and negotiations have failed, as they did when you were talking to your Republican colleague, Tim Scott, back in 2021. He says that this House Progressives Police Reform Bill, I assume he means George Floyd Act, it won't go anywhere. But he has given an impassioned speech saying he wants solutions that would have made a difference, specifically more grants, more de-escalation training, and duty to intervene training. Is this a starting point for talks?
Absolutely. I mean, I've been talking to people on both sides of the aisle, on both sides of the Capitol, in the House of Representatives, and in the Senate. There is a pathway forward, and I'm going to be tireless and not stop until we do significant things to make Americans safer and to make our policing standards higher. And I'm not standing alone on this. The fact that we have police leaders, the largest union that represents the majority of police, that we've been able to come together on bipartisan ideals. I think there's a pathway forward, although I'm very sobered in a divided Congress about our ability to get it done.
Are you talking to Tim Scott now about this?
I don't think Tim Scott and I have stopped talking. Let's be clear. Tim and I have been a proven partnership.
We walked away from the talks a year ago, so you did stop negotiating. Are you renewing those negotiations?
Again, Tim and I have not stopped talking. We're guys that have gotten the Opportunity Zone legislation done. We've gotten criminal justice reform done. We may have stopped formal negotiations, but he and I are actually friends. We may be in different parties and disagree on a host of stuff, but the reality is we're two black men in America who've had really awful experiences with law enforcement that law enforcement leaders say are unjust. We're motivated.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's my senator over here in New Jersey, but it seems like he's so caught up with being friends with the guy than actually fighting for qualified immunity, which if we had time, I would play Jamal Bowman, who talked about qualified immunity on Mehdi Hassan recently, but they're literally just doing nothing. And remember, if you guys go back to when George Floyd, first the protests were high, and we were really in an environment that would have pushed some real substantial legislation. It was President Obama, and I think I even heard Michael Jordan, who stopped the NBA because they were about to shut everything down in the NBA. And it was President Obama who talked to Chris Paul, who at the time was the head of the Players Union, and convinced them not to strike because we got Tim Scott and we got Cory Booker over here working on legislation. Don't worry, guys, they got this. We got this. Our own people. What you think, Day?
To be honest, all I watched that clip and I said, "Oop!" The party says, "Send out the blacks. Go ahead and get out there and talk some talking points, say some things." It's the fact that he literally said, "We have not stopped the talking," and they said later, well, formal negotiation talks have stopped. And I was like, my brother, like, stop. Like, just, do you not know we live in the era of social media? Like, everything you say will be repeated back to you. And it's just like, be honest. You guys don't have a resolution, because having a resolution means you have to actually directly go against power. And police have the propaganda that Americans have grown up with for decades really makes it challenging to cut through that without pushback. You have to be willing to take the heat and actually reform policing, like to actually reimagine policing the way that it should be done. And that includes doing other things like economic policy, educational policies, etc. It's not a silver bullet like people want, but it's unpopular because people have been taught that the solutions are the problem. And it's like, no, this is the problem. The actual institution.
Yeah, no, 100%. David, what you think as we wrap up the show?
Yeah, I have a couple things. One on the food in the trash can. I was like, I remember seeing another clip a while back when people, like, there were grocery store chains that had put like bleach and cleaning chemicals on the food that they had discarded too, so that people couldn't eat it. So I'm like, maybe this is a blessing that, my God, this is edible food still. Like, what have we come to? Like, not only is, like, yes, this is life under capitalism, and then we have this humongous policing system domestically and then also globally with our military that protects and defends capitalist interests. One proposed maybe solution or idea, Denver has a program called STAR. It means Support Team Assisted Response. And you can call 911 and they'll send out an EMT and a mental health professional instead of the police. And it's been really well received in the city. And I believe in the thousands of calls that they've received, they've never once had to call for a police officer backup. And I would love to see more of that expanded, not only here, but across the entire country, because I think that is how you get people connected to resources. And that is, and they are much more qualified to handle these kind of situations. I think what we expect our police officers to do is really unrealistic.
Kimberly, let's go to you for the last comment on this.
Yeah, I guess I'm really skeptical when I hear Cory Booker talk about how, we can do reforms that also cop leadership will be okay with. And it's like, listen, cop leadership is okay with more training because that comes with more money. Okay? They're never going to be okay with you reforming, the police structure in a way where there's going to be more accountability for them, right? When they fire a gun or when they commit abuses. We've seen this before where, police chiefs, the unions have been very hesitant to even back any kind of timid reform. I mean, the only thing that they're willing to back is things that bring more money into the cops' hands. And that's just not, I'm not a person who believes in abolishing the police or abolishing prisons. But I think there's a real appetite within America today with the average voter for police reform, for radical police reform. But that is never on the table when people talk about police reform. The American population maybe doesn't want to ban cops, but guess what? They want a better system, and they've consistently have come out and have demonstrated that, not only through the George Floyd protests, but it's been, a consistent issue within each election. I think, people do have fears about rising crime, but we need to make sure that the argument that we're making is that police react to crime. They don't prevent the crime from happening. And as I've said before, a lot of the crime comes out of the black market. As long as we are keeping a black market that is so huge that even includes different countries in Latin America, right? I mean, there's just no way that violence is not going to occur in that kind of environment. Because in that kind of environment, you don't have any way to mediate issues between folks. In the black market, if I have a problem with you, I get you out of there. You know what I'm saying? I send somebody to get you the hell up out the market. Yeah. There is no way to mediate an issue or anything of that sort. And there's a lot of money. There's billions and billions and billions of dollars here that are at stake within the black market. I think when we position the argument around, hey, we need to shrink the black market and we'd be able to shrink crime, We need to shrink the amount of poverty that we have in this country, and that way we can also shrink, crimes that come out of desperation, like stealing, lying about where you live so your kid can go to the good public school. I mean, these types of crimes are crimes of desperation. I think that's an argument that lands with people, but Democrats especially have refused to really go in on this argument, partially because, these police leaders often will support these Democrats. And not only that, but you have to understand the role that police plays. When politicians do these policies, right, that entrench poverty, they're leaning on the police to keep, the poverty folks in line, which is part of the reason they don't want to go against the police, because the police is essentially beating people into keeping them in line and in hoods.
100%, 100%. I'll be curious. I want to see a good faith debate between people who are pro police prisons and the police versus people who are for defund the police. I don't think I haven't seen it. If anyone have seen that anywhere, put that in the chat. I'll be curious to see that debate. Go ahead, Dave.
To mediate it. Like, I would love to be a moderator on that.
Yeah.
I don't
a good faith moderator.
I was like, I don't think I'm qualified enough to have the conversation, but I would love to be a good faith moderator. So putting that out there.
Gotcha. At some point, I'm tempted to play one of these. Maybe to lighten up the mood, I'm gonna play one of these like default songs. Let's see what as we play out of here. No, I don't know what that is. I'll turn that off. Let's try one more. What's this? Into Space? Whack. All right, next time we do this, we're gonna have something ready for a nice song to play out to. But as we get out of here, I'm gonna just want to give a shout out to this Rage Against the Machine. There is going to be this big protest going on February 19th. It says Rage Against the War Machine. There we go. And this is going to be taking place in Washington, D.C. So it says here 12 days, 15 hours, and it's going to be a whole bunch of people. Let me see. There's a lot of speakers that's going to be here. Here, I want to just show the speakers real quick. So Jimmy Dore, Ron Paul was just added, Tulsi Gabbard, Dennis Kucinich, Scott Horton. I don't know those people. Oh, I know Andrew Napolitano, Chris Hedges. That's cool. Not familiar. Garland Nixon. I've seen him on Sabby Sabs. Max Blumenthal. And just Jill Stein. Yeah, Jill Stein. It's just a ton of people are going to be speaking. So it's going to be interesting. I wish I could go, but I gotta work. Unless I'm not feeling too, I feel sick coming on.
You look real. February 19th. Got to call out to me.
Yeah. So, and then the last thing I want to show is that I just created a buymecoffeepage.com if you want to support the efforts that I'm doing on Twitter, making clips, political clips. I would love to appreciate just $1 a day or $2, not a day, a month. I would appreciate it greatly. And it will help out with also other endeavors that I'm working on. mutualaidpoliticalparty.org is going to be getting off in about 2 weeks. We're going to start testing the site soon. So I'm very excited about that. Let's go to the last words from our guests. Not even our guests. This is my family, from the Political Junkie family, regular people. David, let me be a gentleman. Kimberly, give us the first out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always glad to come on. I have great conversations, and yeah, thank you so much for having me on again.
Much love to Kimberly. Thank you for giving us that inside information on the DSA in Rhode Island and potentially coming up with the third party. I'd love to work with you all on that with the mutual aid political parties. And let us know anything else coming up. David, what's going on?
Yeah, thank you for having me back. Happy New Year. Yeah, thank you. I was like, and thanks for letting me always kind of come in here and just talk about how much I love Colorado and Denver and the things that I like that we're doing. And I think that this is a great like local areas are great places to means test these kind of programs to roll them out across the country. So thank you.
No problem. Dave, my man Dave.
Yeah, David and I are soon to launch a podcast called Call Me Limbo. So get really prepared by following us on Instagram. It's Call Me Limbo Pod, CallmeLimbopod. Yeah, I can't wait for that. So thank you for having us.
Yeah, can't wait to check that out. I'm so looking forward to that. And I think we got one. Kimberly, what's your next move in Rhode Island? That's a good question. Kimberly, what's the next move? We know you ran before.
Yeah, I ran before. I'm not sure if I'm going to be running anytime soon. I'm really going to be dedicating a lot of my time towards throwing social events.
Okay.
Because I think social events are very important to building real connections with people that extend past just like, we believe in the same stuff. And then I'm going to try to, help the DSA build out a third party here.
Nice. Okay, I'd love to hear about your strategy endeavor, because that sounds like strategy, trying to build up community and organize with neighbors to have events. That just having watching this, like the Super Bowl's coming up. If everybody came together and just got to know each other by watching the Super Bowl, that would be cool. So, all right, everybody, thank you so much for coming to the show. Please check out tomorrow. I'm kind of nervous, or super nervous. I was telling my wife interviewing the great Shama Shawant, the great fighter, and I have a lot of questions. And I hope you all come by tomorrow, 7:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as we talk about Workers' Strike Back and her initiative. All right, everybody, thank you for coming by. Much love. Let me give a quick shout out, Paul Patrick, the Gemon, PJ Holly, Lamb the Man, John Kemper, Gamer for Life. Who else we had here? Much love to everybody who came out. Bryce Smith and Steve. Much love to y'all. Have a great one. Adios. Could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. Adios.